next to oldest brother. And I'm here today, as the pastor said, we're here to celebrate his life. So my talk about Ricky is going to be some funny stories, and some of y'all in the audience feel free to laugh because he lived a life of laughter and joy. And I think when we come to funerals, we have a propensity to be sad and regretful. But his life, I think we can celebrate it because he touched so many of the people in this room. And the converse of that is you all touched his life. And I wanted to honor the people that touched his life in this room today. First off, I'd like to honor his wife, Teresa, who spent the major portion of her adult life with him as his wife. In the last few years, it's been kind of rough because he's been through a lot of illness. And matter of fact, I think he's been sick most of your marriage. You've had to care for him for a lot of times, Teresa, through thick and thin. And I honor that today, and my family honors that today. I saw that in many of you in this room that have stood by your spouses, and we've had that example from many of you. But that's the way we should take care of our spouses, and Teresa's lived out that very well. And being married to my brother Ricky, and I thank her and for her family that has also been supporting Ricky through his illnesses. I'd like to also honor my brothers that are here today. We were the youngest, so we had older brothers that went ahead of us and kind of paved the way. And they showed us how to do some things, and they showed us how not to do some things. And so I'll talk about some of those stories. And y'all know my brothers and my uncles, who I'm also honoring today. We were a family of a bunch of practical jokers and cut-ups. And that's the way Ricky's life was shaped. He was shaped to be a fun-loving person. I'd like to honor my nieces and nephews that are here today. He loved them like his own children. As you know, Ricky didn't have any children of his own. And also my own sons, he loved like his own sons, Scott and Brett. My uncles, there were many of them. And as I said earlier, there was always something going on when we were at Momo's house, at Big Momo's house. They were always trying to cut up with us. And I remember one story about my Aunt Olame when she was dating my Uncle William. We would go there and she'd always try to kiss us. We didn't like to be kissed, especially when I was a woman. Several of my uncles were examples for us. My uncles were examples for us to live a Christian life. And my dad had one sister, Aunt Velma, who is still alive. She's 99 years old. She lives in Dalton, Georgia. And she was the sweetest aunt you could meet. And she was always an advocate for us. She was always building us up and always telling us that we could do whatever we wanted to do with our life. And to this day, I know Ricky visited her several times since she's been in the nursing home. And there was just a great bond between her and all of her nephews and nieces that she knew. And we're thankful that she was a part of her life. Think about it. She was the only daughter in a whole, I forgot how many, 8 children, 8 sons, I guess. Somebody give me the right number. She had a lot of brothers, and she was the matriarch of that whole family. And she showed us how aunts should be. And she wanted to kiss us too. I have a personal thank you. My 3rd grade teacher was here yesterday, Miss Christian, and Miss Riley, who worked in the office when we were going to school. And those people helped shape Ricky and me as well growing up, more than they would know. And she is approaching 90 years old, and she was here to come and pay respect to my brother Ricky. Those of you that knew my brother as a truck driver, I'd like to honor his trucking buddies today, because there were probably a lot of y'all, and y'all could tell all the trucking stories. Like my dad used to sit around and tell trucking stories. I'm an old Navy guy, and I sit around and tell Navy stories. But my brothers tell trucking stories because that's what they did for a living. And I miss Ricky's trucking stories. And my brothers could tell some that might get them locked up if there were law enforcement in the office. But I always enjoy the stories because that's what our life is. It's about what we do. It's the things that we do and the people that we meet while we're doing it. The people that help us along the way. And I know Ricky could sit and tell you stories and it would make you laugh and make you smile. And so that's how I remember him. He was always telling trucking stories. Now, when I was about 4 years old, we were living in a little 3-room house out the road from my grandparents down in Fulton Bridge community. And my mom had made me mad one day, and I decided I'm just going to leave home. So I got my little monkey and my little suitcase. I had any clothes in it, but I had a suitcase and a little monkey, and I left to go. And I'd only been out to my grandparents' house, but that was my world. There was nothing beyond that. And so I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to pull this off. As I'm leaving the house, Ricky uttered his first words that we remember him ever saying. He said, "Bye." I think my brothers were hiding in the cornfield watching me walk out, and they were laughing. They couldn't, so hard they couldn't stand it. Now, let me tell you about my Uncle William. Years ago, we went down to our grandparents, and they were living down there in Ewan, and he had bought some clippers from Sears. And he was dying to try those clippers out. And he said, "You boys come over here, let me try these clippers out." I'm thinking, I'm not sure if we want to do that, Ricky. So he gave me and Ricky a haircut, and the more he cut, the more he had to cut. he would say, "Oops." I go, "That don't sound good." So we ended up with a bald head. And my mom, her sense of humor is, "Let's go get your picture made." And she has plenty of those pictures. Some of those on the screen up here. When we were living over on the east side of town, we started going to Hamilton Free Baptist Church. And at the time, they met in a little garage building. It's just right down there, right straight down from the funeral home. And that's the church. If you open the back door on Sunday night, the preacher could watch the drive-in movie across the street from the pulpit. So we were there on one Sunday morning, and we didn't know that Ricky had balloons in his pocket. And so we were sitting there listening to the sermon, and Ricky had pulled out a balloon and blew it up to the point where it popped. And the matriarch of our church, Miss Mady May, who never had any children, she was sitting right in front of us, and she let out a big yell, and the whole church stopped. And so Mom is walking Ricky out to give him a little whipping, and she said, "Don't you whip that child." When we lived in downtown Hamilton, we lived close to the Alabama Power Company, and they'd always throw these refrigerator boxes out because they had appliances there. And Ricky and I and Harold and probably Jerry and Denver, we'd go get these refrigerator boxes and we'd make forts out of them. We'd cut holes in them for windows and we'd put them all together. We could build us a fort like in 20 or 30 minutes with these old refrigerator boxes. So that's one of the things we did as kids. I guess Ricky was destined to be a truck driver because when he was just barely old enough to walk, Daddy would always take him in the truck with him and show him how to shift gears in his 18-wheeler truck. So that was probably the start of his trucking career. One of our favorite things to do at that time was to go with Dad down to the Greensboro chicken plant. Y'all ever been to the Greensboro chicken plant? You can smell it a mile away. Anyway, we would go there, and the typical day was we'd get there early in the morning, and this in Greensboro, Alabama. Forrest Gump called it Greenbow, Alabama. And so we would be there and line it up to get loaded, and if we had to go through lunch, we would go up, Dad would go up to the general store and buy some potted meat and Vienna sausage, and that's what we had for lunch. Of course, he had sardines on the side, but we didn't eat sardines. And so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do on the way home, and we always stopped at a little roadside cafeteria, and we always ordered the same thing. What you want, Ricky? Hamburger and a Coke. And the Coke could be a Pepsi or a Coke, it didn't matter, whatever flavor they had. Ricky did not like to go to school when he was young. Some of y'all know this. We could put him on a school bus, and the school bus would have to stop and let him off because he was not going to school. One particular morning, he had missed the school bus, and Mom was destined for him to go to school. And we had the neighbor girls, the Walkers. Pat Walker had a car, and so Mom put her in the back seat of Pat Walker's car, put him in on one side. He got out on the other side. He was not going to school that day. I think he got over that, but in the first couple of years of going to school, he did not like to go to school. We always had bicycles growing up, as most kids did at our age. We were always riding somewhere on our bicycles. And the funny thing is, probably times have changed a little bit since then, but we would leave school, or we would leave the house in the morning in the summertime or in the spring when we were out from school, and we wouldn't come back till it was time to eat lunch, till we got hungry. And Mom never worried about us because we knew what our boundaries were, and we were in a neighborhood where we knew everybody. And that's kind of rare these days, but I remember my own sons when they were riding bicycles in our neighborhood. It kind of reminded me of Ricky and me when we were little kids riding our bicycles. And so times have changed a little bit since then, but literally we never came home until it was time to eat or it was too dark to play. So that's kind of what we did as kids growing up. In 6th grade, Ricky decided to play basketball, and we went over to Rec Center. I think Mr. Emerson was the organizer of the Recreational League basketball, and they decided they didn't have enough coaches, and so Mr. Emerson was asking for people to be coaches, and so I'm in 9th grade, he's in 6th grade, and I volunteered to be his coach. And so you can imagine coaching your little brother, he wants to play the whole game. And so anyway, there were some people, good friends of ours on that team that I remember. Eric Green was one of those. And I really enjoyed coaching my little brother in basketball. Now, back in the day, my niece Belinda, she wasn't that much younger than us. And so she would come over and play a lot with us, and as our other cousins, Roger and JD, and a lot of our different, not cousins, but nieces and nephews would come over and play when we were at that age. And one particular day, Ricky had gone down to the end of the road and built a little fort down in the woods. And Linda decided that she wanted to go and check out this fort, and he says, "Nope, no girls allowed." So she didn't get to go in the fort. We had a lot of neighborhood kids back then. Most of those kids went on to do great things with their life, and some of them have passed away already. The Philip Walker, who used to live next to us, Eric Green, has passed away. We had the Jack and Lucy Gambino, and we had the Comptons that lived across the street, and Nancy and Neil Russell that lived next door to us. And we had Jamie and Eric and Sheila Green, who we hung out with most of our life. They seemed to move where we moved. And so you remember those neighborhood kids, and you remember Ricky and the stories that we could tell about all those things that we did. And I was seeing Jamie, he called himself Jim now, but we called him Jamie. He was here last night, and we were talking about some of those old times that we used to get into. And I remember riding, Ricky had got a new 10-speed, and the new 10-speed bike had a brand new speedometer on it. It registered 60 miles an hour. And I decided I can break that speedometer going down the hill to our house. The problem was there was a 90-degree curve at the bottom of the hill. So I got on his brand new 10-speed bicycle, and I was pedaling as fast as I could, and I navigated the curve at the bottom. I lifted my hands off the steering wheel, and and when I reached back down, the handlebars weren't there. And I fell over into the ditch and rolled, and I was laying in a ditch, and Ricky and Eric and Jamie were over there playing in a vacant lot, playing softball, and they came running over and dragged me to the house. And I had to go to the emergency room. Thankfully, nothing was broken, but that's just the kind of kids we were back then. We weren't afraid of anything. We used to ride, we had an old Suzuki 360 Enduro motorcycle. We didn't even wear a helmet on that thing. We would jump anything you could jump with it. And the other benefit of living on that hill is that thing had so much compression on it, you couldn't kickstart it. So we'd put it in second gear and push it off and let out on the clutch to get it started. And whoever was on it at that time got to ride it first. Now, our brother Harold, sometimes he could get us into trouble. And I told him I was going to tell this story today. Dad had gone down to Ewan to see our grandparents and Mom, and we had an old car sitting at home. And the last thing he said as he was leaving, "Whatever you boys do, don't drive that old car while I'm gone." Well, guess what? Harold couldn't wait till they left. So Harold goes, "Y'all want to go to the store?" And we're thinking, "Are you buying?" So, of course, we piled into this old Oldsmobile, and we headed out of our neighborhood. The store was at 2 miles away. And coming out of our subdivision, I looked at Harold, and he had a his eyes were about this big around. He said, the accelerator is stuck. The accelerator is stuck. I said, what are we going to do? He said, I don't know. So we kept driving. I guess he decided to turn into a curve and clean out a ditch so we could stop that way. When the car got stopped, Ricky was already out of the car standing watching us. He had jumped out of the car. And Harold said, y'all get in the car, we're going to have to. Ricky and I walked back. I'm glad Mom's not here today, although I wish she could have been here. I wouldn't tell this story if she were in the room because she always thought we were the most gracious children she ever had. Ricky and I had a Croston air rifle. Both of us, we had them just alike. You could pump that air rifle up 10 times and shoot a BB through a metal garbage can. So we decided, you want to play Army for real? We were always playing Army. And so we decided we could pump that BB gun up one time and it wouldn't hurt too bad. So we decided we were going to have BB gun wars. And so we'd get our gun loaded up with BBs. And the rule was you couldn't shoot below the waist. And so we would go hunting each other with BB guns and we'd shoot each other below the waist. It wouldn't hurt that bad. That's the kind of kids we were. Now I'm going to tell them my brother Dale and Denver and Harold. And we went up fishing one time in Waterloo on the Tennessee River. We fished all weekend. We were camping. Dale had a camper. Belinda was there. Roger, JD, all the kids were there. I believe Dale's in-laws were there. And we had a really big camp going. We had several cars and we had some tents and we had all this stuff. And all of a sudden, we decided there's something not right. And Dale kept saying, I think there's a panther out there. I think there's a panther out there. So I looked at Ricky and we said, we might ought to go in the car. So we all went in the car and apparently there was a panther out there that came into our campground. Well, not only did we had a panther, we didn't catch any fish for the whole weekend. So on the way back, we decided to stop at the dam in Florence and buy us a catfish. We bought a 20-pound catfish, and they made Ricky and me sit on the cooler. It was still alive, bouncing around in the cooler in the back of the camper. Well, we brought that fish home and put it in the bathtub, and Mom was at church. This was on a Sunday afternoon, and we didn't tell her about the fish in the bathtub. So she came home and saw the fish in the bathtub, and I thought she was going to have a heart attack. So my brothers, not me, my brothers told her that we caught that catfish. She took a picture of Harold holding it up. The next week it was in the Marion County Journal. Local man catches huge catfish. It took us several years, and I don't know who was it that finally told her that we didn't catch that catfish. We were too old to get a whipping by then, but it was a long time. So. One of the toys that we played with growing up was a G.I. Joe with a Kung Fu grip and the Evel Knievel wind-up motorcycle. Some of y'all remember what I'm talking about. In the late 70s, when Ricky and I were teenagers, we had spent time with our brothers in different places. We had been with Denver to Fort Benning. We'd been at Denver's house and Fort Polk, and when he was in Louisiana, my older brothers. And Jerry was living in Tuscaloosa. Jerry and Wanda were there. And we would go down in the summertime. We didn't know when we were coming home. We'd just go down there until we got tired and they kicked us out. And they had all these neighborhood kids around them. And so we became friends with these neighborhood kids. And Ricky and I ended up dating two sisters. The two girls across the street, they were exactly our age. One was my age, one was Ricky's age. And so we ended up, I guess you would say, dating these young ladies. And then one summer, I think Wanda brought him to our house in Hamilton. And so anyway, it's not too usual for your daughter, for your brother to date the sister of the girl you're dating. But anyway, that was a period in our life that was kind of interesting. I guess the last time that I saw Ricky on a daily basis, we lived, we were brothers in the same house. The last time that I spent with him on a daily basis, I wrote about it in my book, about the day that I went to the Navy. I went in the Navy, and Ricky and Mom took me to the bus stop down at the White's Auto Store, if y'all remember that, used to be here, to join the Navy. And that was the last time that I spent every day of my life with Ricky, and then we both went into adulthood after that. And then Ricky became, he began work as a truck driver after that. He worked with youth at his church. He loved his nieces and nephews. He loved my children like his own children. He became an entrepreneur. But I think the most thing that we'll remember him for is being our brother, our little brother. And just the love that he had for people in general. And I know he loved his wife, Teresa. What is it that we call the fabric of our life? Does anybody have an idea what the fabric of our life is? You ask some people to tell us about their life. They normally tell you about their career, how much money they made, all kinds of material things that they have. I don't believe that was anything in Ricky's DNA. His DNA was about people, all the people in this room that had an influence on his life. That's what Ricky was about. The fabric of his life was relationships with people, loving the people around him, loving people that didn't even love him, and being an uncle, being a brother, and being a husband, and being the best person he could be with the tools and the gifts that God gave him. And I would hope you all would remember him as that, as the giving, loving person that he was. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think I've ever heard him raise his voice as an adult. Now, when we were kids, we'd yell at each other. But as an adult, I don't believe I ever saw him raise his voice to anyone in anger or any kind of remorse or anything. And so that's how I would like to remember him. Now, let me talk to you for just a second about our God. Our God, Ricky and I worship, is a loving God. And thankfully, I believe Ricky's in heaven now looking down upon us. And he is enjoying all the blessings that God promised us in the Bible. And growing up in small town, some of the sermons that we heard were condemning in nature. And I think sometimes people get the wrong idea about God. God is not a hateful God. God is a merciful God. And I think he would want us to say this message today. If you have been seeking out God, know that God is seeking out you, and he loves you. He sent his only son to die on the cross that we could have an eternal relationship with him. And we can also enjoy the blessings of this life, like my brother. And I would think out of everything that Ricky held dear, it was his faith and his trust in God. And I could see through these last few years that he really trusted in God and he leaned upon him. And know this, that I had several friends and family and everybody praying for him. And that whole experience with being in relation with Christ and with God is the only thing that we can hang our hat on in this world. And so I'd like for you to take that with you today. If you feel like God is trying to hunt you down, that is not true. He's seeking you, yes. But it's because he loves you. He wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to see you in heaven with him. That's why he created us, so we can glorify his name, and that we can spend our eternity with him in heaven. And if you are seeking him, I would ask that you pray and reach out to God because he's there. Thank you.